Hello everybody, the interview video that you're about to watch with Alan Bennett was conducted to celebrate the launch of the History Boys Educational Edition from Faber and Faber, available in all good bookstores. You can pick up a copy today. I'll put the Amazon link in the description. It contains the complete original text and then detailed analysis of language, structure, form, context, themes written by me. So please do pick up a copy. It's going to really help you with your studies, and enjoy the interview. Hello everybody and welcome to this very special video. As you'll no doubt instantly recognise, I am joined today by actor, author, playwright and screenwriter Alan Bennett. Thank you for joining us. So we're here today to celebrate a new edition of the History Boys, and it's the first in an educational series from Faber and Faber Publishing. That's where we are today, in this lovely building. And basically what you get is the complete original play by Alan Bennett and then detailed analysis of language, structure, form, themes, context by me. So you can follow the link in the description to pick up a copy of the new educational edition. And to celebrate, I asked students and teachers around the country to send me questions that they would like to ask about the History Boys. And I had a lot of questions sent in, so thank you for those. We're going to go through a few today, if that's okay with you.
Fine.
So first,
I think I should say the author isn't always the best person to ask. I mean, it's the old quotation from D.H. Lawrence, trust the tale, not the teller, that the author often doesn't know more about the play than the people who read it, more about the book than the person who reads it. But anyway, that's by the way.
No, I agree. There are probably lots of students and teachers who've read it more times than you have, I'd imagine.
Well, maybe so, I hope so.
Which is amazing. So, I mean, the first thing I'd love you to comment on is the fact that the History Boys is now on the GCSE syllabus for sort of 15 and 16-year-olds, the A-level syllabus for 17 and 18-year-olds, and it was voted Britain's favourite play a couple of years ago, with Hamlet coming in at number 2, so pretty good deal. So I just wonder, in your opinion, what do you think makes it such a popular play?
Well, it's about getting into it's getting into Oxford and Cambridge, but it's not simply about that. It's about getting into any institution of higher learning, passing an exam, and it's in a way a primer for passing the examination. I mean, for avoiding the pitfalls of an examination and going, as it were, for the wrong end of the stick in order to impress the examiners. In a way, it's about cheating, because that's how I got through my exams, but to get into university and university itself, of being eye-catching, and you don't necessarily have to know the subject inside out to do well in an examination. And that's what Irwin in the play teaches the boys. And that's anathema to Hector, who has a much more, spiritual, in a sense, view of knowledge and of reading and of it being to do, an old-fashioned view in a way, being to do with broadening the mind and deepening one's sensibility. And he hates education in a sense. He hates examinations, and so that's the main conflict in the play between Hector and Irwin.
It doesn't seem as either like there's one that you're suggesting is the right way. I think a lot of people feel that.
I think we always used to, Nicholas Heitner, who directed it, always used to say parents in the audience would want their children educated by Irwin, because he'd get them through the examination and get them in. But at the same time, they would like Hector's teaching to be the teaching that was remembered in later years, something that you could go back to, and something that you would be able to quote. I mean, it's quoting people like to think of their education as children, endowing them with poetry which they learn by heart and so on. And that is Hector's view of learning, but it's very much outmoded, I think, now.
How much of the poetry in the play did you know by heart?
Very, very little. You know, the only things I know by heart are hymns, and that was because I went to a state school, a grammar school, and every morning we had assembly, and we sang a hymn, and then I was quite religious as a boy, and so I went to church, and so I know hymns ancient and modern off by heart, and parts of the prayer book, but not much else.
I would like to be taught by Hector, personally. I think that's inspirational.
But you can see that in the play, the boys get impatient with him when they realise that they're running out of time, and Rog says, we can't be messing about with all this, we won't. And so there is a conflict there.
Yeah, the other option would be Mrs. Lintott.
Well, Mrs. Lintott is very much like the teacher who taught me history at school, who wasn't in any sense charismatic. He was, like Mrs. Lintott, wedded to facts, and you just got facts at every lesson. And if you knew the facts as he'd given them to you, you would get through the exam, but you wouldn't necessarily get into Oxford and Cambridge or any competitive university examination, and because you would just all be saying the same thing. Yeah. But at the same time, I liked him, and I liked history, which and he was a person who made me want to do it. But Mrs. Lintott, she's the voice of, not merely of reason, but she's the detached voice in the play. She's the one that Erwin talks to, Hector talks to her, the boys talk to her, and she is. I mean, she's not a feminist figure really. Although the scene where they do a mock examination, and she complains about women just being following behind the men with the bucket. I wrote that scene without thinking that it was funny, really, and then when she did it, it was uproarious. Well, she being Frances Latour. Yeah. She's very down to earth, and she won't take any rubbish from Hector. For instance, when he's talking about touching up the boys and making out it was a kind of spiritual experience, she said, "Oh, a grope is a grope; it's not the Annunciation." And she's very. I don't know whether I admire Mrs. Lintott really. Yeah. I tend to think she embodies my view of women, probably, thinking of them as being more sensible than men and less histrionic. I don't quite go along with David Hare. Makes women, as it were, the repository of all virtue. I don't really think that, but at the same time, she is the voice of common sense.
Yeah, I think having read lots of your work, there are lots of texts where women sort of put up with the ridiculous behaviour of men, and then in the end, just sort of near the end, stand up and say, "Look, this is ridiculous." But like you say, they're not sort of perfect figures either. No. And in the Talking Heads, some of the women are very sinister as well, which I think is enjoyable. So just to think about the different teachers, I know you've said that you didn't have a charismatic teacher as a child like Hector, but would you have liked that kind of teacher?
Well, I think I would. By the time I was in the sixth form, I would, and I knew I'd read enough biographies to an autobiography is to know that such teachers existed. I'd read Stephen Spender's World Within World, when he talks about his childhood and a master at school called Greetorex, I think his name was, who was a musician who, as it were, divined the fact that there was something different about Spender and encouraged him. And I wanted somebody to encourage me, but nobody did. And I didn't have a mesmeric teacher until not merely I was at university, after I'd done my degree at university, and then I stayed on and did research in medieval history. And the man who supervised me, he didn't actually supervise me in a very sort of general way, was a historian called Bruce McFarlane at Magdalen College at Oxford, and he was a teacher through and through, so that you would go and see him and you wouldn't talk about anything to do with work, and yet you would come out and think it was the only thing you really wanted to do, and he's the only person I ever met who affected me in that way.
Yeah, that's great. There's such an interesting line in Untold Stories. I'll give you the quote. So you write in a diary entry that originally there was a sort of gymnasium scene in the History Boys, but you took it out because I think Nicholas Heitner said, well, sixth formers don't do PE. And you agreed to take it out, and you said, and this is the quote, you didn't want the audience to think, but school isn't like that, and therefore they're off the hook. And I just wonder what hook you want the audience to be on in the History Boys.
I think I meant by that I didn't want the audience to think that this was a school that was safely in the past, and so that none of the issues raised mattered really. And I think that's right. I think that although in theory the play is set in 1980, it's only set in 1980 because that was the time when the last time when boys and girls went up to Oxford and Cambridge for the weekend, as I did, and sat the examination, and then were interviewed, and they got to know the tutors and so on. I found out that didn't happen anymore after 1980, so that's why it was set then. But other than that, it's a contemporary play, and it's not a hook in the sense that I just didn't want the audience to think none of these things matter anymore. Yeah. And of course they do. The big thing, which I still feel is an omission, though I still can't quite see how I could have done anything about it, was that any play about boys and girls going to university has to face the fact that they're going to have to pay for it. Yeah. Now, it's not in the play because when I was a boy, that was all that never arose. That, you know, it was if you got a place or a scholarship or anything, any institution of higher learning, whether it be university or art school or drama school, it would all be paid for, just without any, and you didn't think about it, you know, that it was so much ingrained, and it would be agreed between all parties, all political parties, that was the best way, and it still seems to me absolutely the only way to do education. But anyway, nowadays, of course, that bulk's very large in any child's experience of education. It's dealt with very, very briefly in the film of History Boys, when I think it's Lockwood says
At the beginning.
he's going to go in the army. And they all say, "What are you going to the army? What are you going to the army for?" He said, "Because they'll pay for me. They'll pay for university," which of course they would. But you know, as soon as he says it, that by the laws of irony, he's going to die. And indeed, he's killed by friendly fire in the final scene of the play. But other than that, it's not touched on. But I still can't see, without tearing the play apart, how you could have dealt with that, really.
No. You talk about the ending there. The ending is so bleak in many ways and very kind of tragic. And I wonder, was that always the plan for how it was going to end? Did you see that as inevitable?
I didn't. Well, I knew it was sad, the ending. I didn't feel a bit as bleak. And I knew it worked because from the first preview, when the play was rather longer than it ended up being, there'd been an enormous amount of laughter, and it had actually stopped the show twice. But we then got to the last section after Hector's died, and Mrs. Lint is telling the audience what the future is for the boy, and they each put up their hand when she mentions their name, and then you get to Posner, who you think is going to go on to great things, and of course he doesn't. And I felt that was true, and in the film, Posner has a rather happier ending, because he then becomes a teacher, and he's very good at drama. He's very ironical about his life. He says he's not happy, but he's not unhappy about it. Yeah. Now, the reason why the ending in the film was, as it were, less stark than in the play was because there was another death in the film. Lockwood had been killed. And Lockwood had been killed, Hector had been killed, and Irwin had been in the accident. So I think Nick felt and I felt that you're laying it on a bit thick, really.
Right.
But somebody said, "Oh, it's all the gays who get it," and that had never occurred to me. But and it certainly wasn't my intention. But anyway. But the good thing, when we did it in previews, the silence when you got to the end was so extraordinary, and you normally can tell with an audience whether they're there or not, because they'd be coughing and sniffing and whatever, but there was absolute utter silence at the end until the curtain came down.
I've seen some footage online, snippets from the performances on stage, and reading the play, it's incredibly funny. You laugh on at every page, but it seemed that in performance, the audience almost didn't stop laughing for the whole, every line, and the delivery from the actors and actresses was so spot on.
No, it was the boys in the first few performances, they knew which bits were funny that they did. And they knew where the laughs were, as they thought, but they hadn't divined that there were laughs in the text apart from that, and so they were very surprised when there were other laughs than the ones they'd expected.
That's fantastic. And as you were saying about the hook being, that it could still apply to today, as it were, and I thought it was quite interesting just at the end there where Mrs. Lintott says about the internet. So I thought that really, right at the end, it just hits you that this is still relevant today. Everything that the boys are going through, this sort of search for identity, the teachers who seem to have it all together but are sort of don't really. I thought it was really clever. Probably the funniest bit, I think, for me is the French brothel scene, and I love that for a number of reasons, but I love the way that it's so long, and it seems to me such a risk that it relies on either an audience who knows French, or an audience who, or actors who, their physicality and you know what they do on stage gets the message across. And I just wonder, and a number of people asked me to ask you, where did that come from in your mind?
Well, to begin with, it was a risk to do it because none of the boys spoke French at all. I mean, they had to be right from, they had to just mimic and do it by sound alone. They often didn't know what they were saying. And it's also the scene pinpoints the way that Hector's teaching is dangerous, in the sense that as soon as the headmaster comes in, they have to change, as it were, pretend that it's a hospital and not a brothel. So that, in a sense, the contract between Hector and the boys is that they don't tell on him, and he doesn't, and he teaches in the way that he likes to teach.
Right. Okay.
And so there is a kind of understanding between them. But it was a risk, but it was such franglais, really. I mean, a lot of it. There's enough to be able to tell what's going on, even if you don't altogether understand all the words. And they overacted it so outrageously that it was fine. But I think the audience was amazed that it was going on so long in French, and they were expecting to go into English at any point, and it didn't do. And then, of course, that puts the audience in the same position as the headmaster, who doesn't understand at all what's going on.
Wonderful sort of dramatic irony as the headmaster comes in and is the only person who doesn't realise when they say, "Oh yes, you know, wounded soldier," and hilarious.